When we read about important leaders in history, we often focus on the battles they won or lost, or the political changes they enacted. This is obviously more important than the other aspects of their day-to-day life, but I find it nonetheless interesting to learn about the lesser-known qualities of historical leaders, like the fact that a few of them found time to compose music. There are many political figures in history who were fairly talented musicians, but for this video, I will be focusing on a select few who also composed in their spare time. First, I will start with Ivan IV of Russia, known by most now as Ivan the Terrible. In contrast to his tyrannical, bloodthirsty reign, Ivan was also a composer of calm, meditative music for the Orthodox Church. Most of his music has been lost to history, and in all honesty, I don't know how much of a tragedy this is. But, if you are interested in the softer side of this paranoid mass murderer, you can always listen to two of his Stikera, which were recorded by the Voronov Quartet in 1989. If music written by mass murderers is your cup of tea, I will offer a link in the description to where you can purchase the only recording of these pieces I am aware of. The form of these compositions is the Orthodox hymn known as stikaron, which is Greek for set in verse, and are similar to early Catholic chants in that they are monophonic, which means they are written for a singular melodic voice to be performed alone or by many in unison. Next up is English King Henry VIII. Henry is famous for many things: his several marriages, his size, and his founding of the Anglican Church. But many forget he was also a composer of songs and consorts. Consorts being the name given to many diverse instrumental works written in England during the Renaissance. Of all the works composed by Henry VIII, none achieved more fame in his time than his song Pastime with Good Company. It was rare in Europe in the Renaissance, or any other period to be frank, for music to escape the halls of a royal court and become popular among commoners. Pastime with Good Company would prove a rare exception to this. The song was considered so catchy that eventually it would be heard all across England and even elsewhere in Europe. Most now consider Henry VIII one of the great royal patrons of English music, and with his large collection of instruments and his formidable support of English composers and musicians, he would shape English music for centuries. Of all the composers he supported, none would become more famous than Thomas Tallis, whose career later in life would lead him to become one of England's most cherished Renaissance composers. But I think there is a not-so-flowery side to Henry VIII's contribution to English music history. Henry VIII's tumultuous reformation of the English monasteries would lead to many conflicts, and it is during these conflicts that huge swaths of English medieval heritage will be destroyed. Countless specimens of artwork, stained glass, and illuminated manuscripts will be destroyed in the ensuing Reformation. In these manuscripts, medieval monks recorded most of their liturgical compositions. To give you an example of the totality of this destruction, of the 600 books kept at the Worcester Priory, only 6 would survive the English Reformation, and that is only one monastery of many that were dissolved or destroyed during this period. I feel the need to mention this because it is an often overlooked part of Henry VIII's musical legacy. Finally, and perhaps in my opinion the most talented and undoubtedly least unsavory character of my list, is Frederick the Great of Prussia. Among Germans, Frederick the Great is known perhaps most of all as an enlightened reformer and a great military tactician. He was also a quite prolific composer and a rather gifted flutist, and he would write over 100 sonatas for this instrument alone. And he didn't stop there, as he wrote even grander works such as symphonies and concertos. have to say, the pieces are by no means masterworks, but they are very well composed nonetheless. In fact, of all the political leaders who were also composers when they had the time to spare, I don't think any match Frederick the Great. And of all the figures I have mentioned here, Frederick the Great is the only one I have ever listened to in earnest. I also have to mention perhaps Frederick the Great's most important gift to musical history, which is the theme he offered the aging Johann Sebastian Bach after showing him an early pianoforte at his court in Potsdam. Frederick presented Bach with his rather lengthy theme and requested that he write a fugue for 6 voices using his theme as the subject. Many in the court found this to be mean-spirited, as the melody was undoubtedly long and very complex to be the subject of a 6-part fugue. But Bach humbly replied he would need some time to finish the work. And 2 months later, Bach published his musical offering. And not only did this offering include the 6-part fugue for which Frederick asked, but also many other complex canonic and fugal iterations of the theme. And perhaps in the most gentlemanly way possible, Bach showed Frederick the Great who the true compositorial master was. I think compositions are an interesting window into the lesser-known aspects of the composer's personality. And when we learn about all the wars these kings fought, the wives they beheaded, or the villages they massacred, we can easily forget that these figures were also still human beings. And I think listening to their music gives us a unique window into aspects of their personalities a history book could only dream of conveying to us.